Shadow Minister of National Development.
I would first like to reply to the Minister of State for National Development. Now, you mentioned to me that pollution is not a national issue, it's a town council issue. May I ask, sir, then what use of it do we have for the Ministry of National Development? Doesn't the policies implemented by them affect each and every town council? Sir, you may be from the government and I may be from the opposition, but deep down, we are all Singaporeans. And shouldn't that be our first and foremost concern? It seems to me that you're politicizing the issue and nitpicking rather than fine-tuning. I would like to build on that further. How many of us have really seen a small-time provision shop become a big-time success in Singapore? Well, one or two of them. The most noted was Sheng Siong. But that seems to be the only one that we have produced in so many years. What happened to our small, local, friendly mama shop? Well, we used to have lots of them until this very famous supermarket store opened called NTUC. Today, we have far more NTUC than PCF kindergartens in Singapore. Now, the Honourable Member of Parliament has mentioned just now that we need not focus solely on elder care. Well, I didn't say that. I do agree with the Minister for National Development that our young families play an important part in our nation-building process, but we should not neglect our elderly as well. And what makes the government MP so confident that elderly citizens just want to stay at home? Staying at home, being in an isolated situation, wouldn't that increase depression? This has been proven scientifically. However, it seems to me that the government MP doesn't have any regard at all for our elderly citizens at all. Many of our elderly citizens have given the best of their years in building up our country. And right now, as we are making the progress, the leap, not just towards a first world parliament or a first world country, I hope that we can also give them a first world quality of living. Am I wrong in asking for that? I certainly don't think so. It seems to me that both the Minister of State and the government MP seems more to be putting politics ahead of policies. I hope that while that might be true for both of them, I hope that would not be representative for the whole government. I still have faith that the government and the opposition will be able to work out on a common agreement in terms of national development. Thank you.
Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by first thanking the Shadow Minister of National Development for his kind gesture for bipartisan approach on this issue. Firstly, I would like to first draw the House to the attention of the specific wording of the clause. The term small-scale retail store itself is not a conclusive statement onto what kind of stores we want to implement in our neighbourhoods. What this clause simply mentions is to allow for the MND to build more spaces that can be used for business purposes, and it is in line with the government belief that growth of industries and growth of communities should be organic in nature, that I do encourage members on both sides of the House, as well as the independents, to come up with creative solutions in this usage of the business space. Part of the reason why we are allowing for the building of more business spaces is because of a very practical consideration. It is a lot cheaper to design and allocate space for business purposes than to build them after the building has been built and that the estate has been matured. And it's because of this practical consideration that we have added this clause. I would like to invite members on both sides of the House to move the debate away from specifically how are we going to use it, and to move that debate to a more local issue, and that subsequently I believe that the MND will be able to accede to requests for specific usages and creative usages that have been identified by members from both sides of the House.
Mr. Baby Chick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beseech both the opposition and the independents to listen to this because I think you want to hear what I have to say. Now, my question is this. It's more of a clarification regarding the upgrading of HDB flats to make it more elder-friendly. The question is, do I have the government's word that the upgrading of HDB flats is uniform across Singapore? Take for instance, a few years ago, Potong Pasir was under an opposition ward and it is famous for having its upgrading projects delayed. Similarly, all of the opposition and independent candidates have shared with me that somehow their upgrading projects are delayed much longer than government wards for some apparent reason. Why is this so, and do I have the government's word that these upgrading projects will be uniform throughout Singapore? Thank you.
Order. Mr. John Erjin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, so I noted concern that in the supply bill, the government made only allocated 2 paragraphs to address the issue of affordability of HDB flats. Now, in those 2 paragraphs, they mentioned that basically the debt-to-service ratio is 23%, which is lower than elsewhere, which has a 30% ratio. Now, those 2 numbers, Mr. Speaker, are entirely meaningless without context. The other country that has a debt-to-service ratio of 30%, for example, could have higher wages, for example. So we say those 2 numbers are meaningless. Let's look at what the real numbers that we have in Singapore today. A 4-room flat, okay, the basic minimum for a family to start, a 4-room flat costs in excess of 500,000 okay, for a flat, right? Now, if you pay it over 25 years...
Yes, Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would first like to clarify that the term debt to service ratio is the ratio between a mortgage payment, monthly mortgage payment of a citizen with regards to his wage.
Okay, now even if we accept that, Mr. Speaker, we still say that basically the number is still meaningless. Just because someone else is paying more doesn't mean we should pay more as well, Mr. Speaker. We have to look at the specific numbers in our case. So a $500,000 flat in Singapore, Mr. Speaker, if you pay over 25 years, actually costs in excess of 1.3 million at an interest rate of only 4%. Now that breaks down to a $52,000 annual cost, which is $4,300 every month. Exactly how do you expect a couple to pay that? Basically, every couple is paying in excess of $2,000 per month just on the flat alone. How exactly is that affordable, Mr. Speaker?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd first like to ask the member whether or not he actually knows what is the interest rate for HLE loans in the market now. On the second point, I would also like to point out to him that contractionary monetary measure that has been suggested by some members from that side of the House would precisely be the measures that will be bringing up interest rates in the market.
Mr. John, I'll allow you to respond to that point. But very quickly.
Mr. Speaker, if he wants to play with numbers, sure, we can do that too. If we use the HDB rate, which is either 2.5 or around 3%, we say you still end up with a cost of in excess of $1,500 per month. How exactly is that affordable? Tell us.
Shadow Minister of Finance, do you have a point or comment?
No, I have a point.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Just now there was a very lively debate on the affordability of housing, and I think this is another issue which is sadly not addressed in the budget. And it's regarding MND. I have a funny feeling that why we are not concerned about our next generation, or rather the lack of it. I'm not too sure how many of you here are fathers and mothers, okay? But the mere fact that we fail to address our pathetic total fertility rate well below the 2.1 that's required to replace ourselves gives me worry about the next generation, because I'm not too sure whether the next 10 sessions down the road, this house will be all people who have immigrated from overseas, okay, or people who were born in Singapore. I'm not suggesting that people who immigrated from overseas are not good enough to be in this house, but the fact that we do not have enough people to replace ourselves is a worrying sign in itself. Why? Let's look at it. We are facing a manpower crunch. Due to a manpower crunch, we need to get foreign workers to come in to work in Singapore. I agree with that. In order to keep our economy growing, we have to have a certain number of foreign workers coming to work in Singapore. I agree insofar with that. Secondly, defense and security. Every year, the Defense Ministry and the Home Affairs Ministry, we are facing a chronic shortage of NSFs to help do our security duties. Our regular recruitment rates are falling. Why? Because we do not have enough people. You can boost your recruitment rate by 10 percentage points, but still, you will still not have enough regulars to fulfill even the regimental duties. And I'm speaking from personal experience, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I would like to implore the government to explore some form of measures to encourage couples to have more kids. Why? If we have more kids, we can replace ourselves and our economy is growing. Because if we don't have organic growth, look, our economy, is GDP is...
Shadow Minister of Finance, you are aware that the current debate is on housing. I believe that you have detracted somewhat from the original discussion.
Mr. Speaker, sir, sorry.
Return to the topic or wrap up your speech. Thank you.
It's on national development, so birth rate is definitely part of national development. Well, let's check.
Point of order.
Prime Minister.
Obviously, the issue of national development has to do with the physical development of our land here, how to maximize it to use. We are not talking about national development of fertility.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm sorry, please check the mandate of your ministry. I believe population growth comes under national development.
Very well, Shadow Minister of Finance. Please quickly wrap up your speech.
Okay, good, thank you. So,
the national population and talent division comes under the Prime Minister's office. That is a more suitable agency to look after that specific task. If the member does not have any solution, I urge you not to be a part of the problem.
sorry, I was about to suggest a solution until you interrupted. Yeah, so basically... Sorry.
Prime Minister, that will be out of order. I will allow the Shadow Minister to complete his speech.
Okay, I will complete my sentence.
But please remind.
Okay, thank you.
That you need to
I would suggest that we include part of our budget ways to improve the fertility rate through baby bonuses or education trust fund. Thank you. I make my point.
Shadow Minister of Manpower.
Mr. Speaker, sir. I agree with the positions that my previous minister and members, what they have spoken. And with regards to the high demand of rental housing and the 30 months waiting period and the families who can't afford the market rents, I feel for them. Now, let's just look at the increasing number of foreigners in Singapore. We are a nation of immigrants, that's a given, but the concerns of our current locals should be addressed as well. I would just like to pose a question to the government, asking them what are the steps taken to ensure that Singaporeans are given priority before foreigners. With the influx of immigrants, we would like to, of course, give families that are not as well off their homes. But the fact is, with this exodus, resentment is building up. During the Meet the People session, my attached MP, Ms. Christine Wong, lamented that the people are crying to her, telling her that they can't get houses. Why? Because they are suffering under the pressure of foreigners and that the increase is bending their backs to the limits. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a step of a new time, a new age, and a new era of change. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have that power within us to make that change. What would we want to do with these people who are suffering under the might of the foreigners who are coming in? Now, I'm not asking us to be protectionists, I'm not asking us to form a Nazi party, but basically we really have to address the concerns of these people who are not well off. And I feel for them. I really do. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll take one last question. Minister of State for National Development. You may continue.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would just like to make a few clarifications with a few issues that have been raised on the issue of housing. The first issue is regarding foreigners. I would like to ask the kind Shadow Minister, is he aware of the prerequisites of HDB flat purchase? If he is not, then I will make it very clear. HDB's stance is that for foreigners to be under a HDB provided roof, he or she must have either A, a spouse who is a Singapore citizen, or B, a family member who is a Singapore citizen. Therefore, I would like to assure all members of this House that no HDB flats are ever provided with subsidies to foreigners unless they do have connections or blood relations with Singapore citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. In the interest of time, the session has to be suspended for, this sitting will have to be suspended for today. The sitting will therefore reconvene 2 weeks from now on the 18th of February. Is there a motion to adjourn debate?
Mr. Speaker, before we adjourn the debate, is it possible for me to make a short point?
Very quickly.
Mr. Speaker, I believe both sides of the House are in consensus that HDB prices can be further regulated. Firstly, I need both sides of the House to understand that we cannot simply just cut HDB prices as and when we want it. There is a market mechanism, and if we suddenly cause the value of HDB houses to fall, there will be panic selling in the market, and it will cause a cascade in the effect, and it will cause a decrease in the wealth of existing HDB flat owners. What we are looking for is measures in which that we can hold the nominal value of the flats and subsequently let the inflation get rid of the real value of the flat. What I urge both houses then is not to debate about whether or not the houses are too expensive, but on measures in which we can prevent the growth from being too high. I've already made the ministerial statement to be very clear that there will be additional inflationary pressures because of the actions of the European Central Bank. I hope that both sides of the House can come up with constructive solutions on this issue. I believe that the House will be meeting in committee for the following week. I believe that this could be an important issue on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to adjourn debate? That's in order. We'll put it to a vote. That the opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Ayes have it. Session is adjourned for today.